Welcome to Pod of Jake, a podcast hosted by Jake. You can go to zerofjake.com to learn more about Jake and everything that he does, and feel free to email him anytime at jake@blogofjake.com or message him at zerofjake on Twitter or at Jake on Warpcast. Anyway, we thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please consider giving Pod of Jake a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, jvmi, for taking the time and joining me on the podcast. It's great to finally connect. You are a NFT artist, streetwear designer, front-end developer at Optimism, and creator of Motorheads, and best known as the creator of Swatches, an interactive art collection that you built on Base. That is super cool, and that's how I came across you in the first place. So excited to talk about that and everything that you're up to. But before we get too deep into things, for those who don't know you, the best place to start would be if you could just kind of walk through your story from as early as you're willing to start to where you are today, and talk about some of the decisions you made along the way.
Sure, yeah. No, thanks for having me and super excited to be here. I can start where maybe we talked previously, so I guess even middle school would be cool, I guess, where I've always been an artist throughout my life. Ever since I was able to hold a pencil, I've doodled things and always gravitated towards that. I feel like medium of self-expression and just ideation in terms of ideas and stuff. When I was super young, I was really obsessed with drawing comic book characters and cartoon characters that I was watching on TV. And I think throughout my life, I've always used visual representation or visual creativity as a way to express myself. So I prior to crypto, I guess, I've went into the crypto Web3 scene, I guess, about three and a half years ago now. I initially was after I had graduated college and everything, I worked at a big tech company in SF. And it was pretty draining and boring, I would say. I got into coding and everything actually in college, and I didn't really know what coding was because I grew up in a more rural area in California. So when I was applying to college, my counselor told me that I should apply to college as a computer science major when I had expressed that I wanted to be a graphic designer. So I think it was a bit of a mix-up because going into college, I didn't actually even know what computer science was, and I thought that I was going to be study how to be a graphic designer. But once I was in the classes and everything, I remember the first day I was really, really fucking confused because we weren't drawing, and there wasn't any sort of Adobe Illustrator program that we were doing, and it was straight Python coding. And I feel like that's just honestly, that story I tell and that I keep with me is honestly just super funny to me because I'm like, why didn't I look into what this was? But I've kind of just rode the wave with that. And then I feel like that is kind of similar to how the rest of my career has gone up until this point, where I've just kind of been in situations and put myself in that situation and kind of made it my own, or express myself through those guardrails. So yeah, I learned how to code and stuff in college, and then graduated, worked at a big company, and then I was there for maybe 2.5 years. And at that point I was super bored because I had all of these creative aspirations that I wanted to do. And while I was working there, I actually wanted to become a streetwear brand founder. So I did run my own clothing brand. It was an independent label that had some mild success, but it wasn't a super big thing that I was doing. And I feel throughout that process was the first time that I really got a taste of what it's like to put your work out there and have people perceive that work, and the process of even putting something out there and people wanting to purchase that and buy it and wear it and rep it. And it was throughout that time that I was super into like iterating on the streetwear stuff, that I came across like one of the brands that I really admired throughout my childhood was the Hundreds. And Bobby Hundreds was one of like the first people that I saw coming from like traditional like just like traditional streetwear world, and like combining that with like NFTs and crypto. So the first time that I heard about what an NFT was through the lens of Bobby Hundreds and through the lens of like his streetwear brand. So once I learned about that, I basically like immediately started looking for jobs that I could become, that would like teach me the skills of how to become a person that could make NFTs with my art. So like shortly after going down that journey, I joined like a small NFT like boutique dev shop, that basically what I did for a year was learn like the technical side of how to create NFTs, and got more deeper into like front end development during that time. And we worked with other artists that were like launching collections. They ranged from like music artists to like digital artists and like random other like companies that were all like wanting to create NFT collections. And throughout that time that I was there, I feel like I learned the chops of like, first of all, like what the space was at the time. It was like right before the huge hype cycle. So I was at that company throughout the entirety of the hype cycle, and like wrote it all the way down too. So I saw that full like I guess like iteration loop of what the market did there. And it was super interesting because I I think like my idea of what NFTs were really matured during that time, because I saw a bunch of projects like basically like make a bunch of money and like mint out their collections and have like these really big roadmaps, and like wasn't even like that much artistic creativity involved, and it was really just like selling speculation is mainly like what I was noticing. And that really was not something that could last, because what they were selling was basically not real. And like it sounds like hard to, or it sounds like harsh to say it, but I really feel like a lot of the NFT stuff back then was like people just aping into projects to flip them, and like everybody just getting dumped on. And it really put a bad taste in my mouth, like regarding what NFTs were at the time. And it kind of turned me off from like wanting to make my own collection, because it seemed like a lot of the NFT hype at that time was like kind of doing that. But like fast forward, I guess a year later, I left that job, and then I started working at Optimism. And when I was working at the previous company, actually, I was trying to build an NFT collection. But it like I built it, deployed it, and it didn't really go anywhere. Like no one minted it. But me deploying that collection was like $20,000 for me to just deploy it, because it was on like Ethereum, like mainnet L1. And that moment, I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is not a sustainable thing. And this is not something that I didn't even make any money off of it. So it was just like $20,000 down the drain in gas. So that like made me aware of like an issue with like ETH L1 stuff, and sparked my interest into joining Optimism. Because one of my homies worked at Optimism already, and I like started learning what L2s were at the time. And like yeah, it just seemed to connect, because the main thing that drove me there was like the possibility of like very cheap gas, so that like artists that don't already have a following, or people that don't really have a bunch of money to shell out on like creating NFTs, could still get their content out there at a lower cost with still like wide distribution. So while I was at Optimism, I worked on my first L2 collection, which is like the first collection that I think people may, if anyone follows me, that you would maybe recognize me from, which was Motorheads. And that was a collection that was pretty random from my perspective, because I was just like a Frank Ocean fan, and I really liked this one picture of Frank Ocean's like Blonde album that came with like the media kit of that. And I just drew that image as like a pixel art image, and then I liked how that looked. So then I just kind of like made a huge NFT collection out of that like silhouette. But I don't really have like anything to do with like motorcycle helmets or anything like that. Like I'm not like a biker. I don't have a motorcycle, but it was just like, I guess, the first iteration of me building a collection and like getting some uh distribution out there, because that collection was pretty successful at the time. It was like the top collection on Optimism mainnet uh for a while, and like the NFT scene on OP mainnet kind of died down now with like base and everything coming up, but that collection like kind of had its day in the sun. And after that, I kind of took a year to like really like think about like what is it that I want to create in the space, because going back to what I was saying before, like I really had a bad taste in my mouth about like collections having big roadmaps and getting people excited about something, and like having people purchase something without really knowing what they're buying, and it just being like a losing game for most people involved. That was like one of the driving things that I wanted to make sure that I was not doing when building collections and like spreading my artwork. And the main like driving factor of what I wanted to do as an artist in the NFT space was to innovate on both like challenge and innovate on like what I could do as an artist, but also what an NFT actually is. So I saw there was like a couple of things which I mean I kind of getting into like what swatches is now, so feel free to stop me at any point. But I'll like tie it up here and then we can maybe keep talking about it.
Yeah,
But
no, it's good. It's good.
basically that yeah, that spurred me to think about like a concept for an NFT that is interactive, because I'm a front end engineer and I've learned like how to do that now. And I think a lot of my motivation for learning how to do front end stuff comes from my pull towards like an artist as well. So I wanted to experiment and basically try to create a collection where the medium that I was like illustrating in, I guess you could say, was code. And that was like the guardrail that I set for myself with swatches, is like how would I create that. And then during that same like time period where I was like thinking about what a concept for that could be, I stumbled upon like, well, I already knew about what Chromie Squiggles was before, but then I like looked into another one of like the Snow Froze collections, which is like that dash 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 collection. And I was reading like the metadata description on OpenSea for one of the NFTs there. And I saw that with that NFT, you could like press buttons on your keyboard and it would manipulate the piece that you're looking at. And when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Like, I've never seen that before. And I'm sure there were like other collections that maybe had done something similar, but this was the first time that I encountered it. And at that point, it kind of like steered the direction of what I wanted to build with swatches, because looking into how that's done, that's basically like how that collection is built is that there's like deployed like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on IPFS. So you can point like the metadata animation URL to one of those IPFS instances, and it's like static code. So like when I realized that that was like a possibility with an NFT and that it would render like that on OpenSea, it made me want to build something like that, because I already had the like knowledge of how to do that, I guess, through my work. So it was the first time that I like combined. I guess it was like if you felt like I combined like all of the skills that I have, like artistically and like programmatically, into like one thing, and that's what swatches ended up being.
Yeah, it's super cool, and I appreciate you sharing the story. It's funny, my first time coming across, one of these sort of like interactive collections was actually swatches. So like you mentioned, like you came across dash dash dash, and like others had probably done it before, but that was your first time seeing that. It's just kind of funny. Like I similarly assume that, besides that dash 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 and um swatches, like other people have also done some like interactive art, but
Yeah,
if you haven't seen it, like it doesn't really matter, at least like from the creative perspective. um you know I don't know, I think like if you have an idea that you love and you think you can do it in a great way, then you basically should. And like not like a lot of times people, when they have an idea, the first thing they do is go to Google to see if it's like already taken. And
uh-huh.
from my perspective, it's like if you haven't heard of it, it doesn't exist. And like it may exist, but it's not big enough that you've heard of it, and you'll inevitably end up doing it in some way different. So like you might as well just sort of do it, or at least like start, and then later you can sort of like see what existed before that might have been similar, but it's just kind of interesting there. And the funny thing is like I didn't actually I saw about swatches. I wasn't involved like on the initial mint or anything. I have one now, but um I didn't know, like I thought it was cool before I even knew it was interactive. Like I just liked the art. And then like later on I found out that it was interactive. So I'm curious, like, do you have a sense for like your audience, your collectors? How, like, does everyone know like what's going on, or is there sort of like levels to it where some people have like a very shallow understanding? They don't even maybe know that it's interactive, like when I first discovered it, and then like later on, maybe they sort of like progress up levels where they start to understand more of like what you intended and they sort of like get it, quote unquote.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's actually very interesting that you bring that up because I was thinking about that with some of the stuff that I'm working on more recently is like how do I make it super obvious that this is interactive? But I was like, I don't know, I kind of like the like element of discovery in that too. Because I was like iterating on a bunch of ideas that like okay like maybe like on like that preview image like you could like have like a symbol or something that like conveys that
Mm.
this piece is interactive. But I feel like that would muddy the art and it would make it less clean, and then like you're kind of doing a trade-off there to like get people to click into it. But then I like going back to the feeling that I felt, I guess, when discovering the Snowfro thing. I think that if like because that was an instance where like I was the viewer, and that experience of being surprised that it's interactive was the thing that I remember the most about viewing that piece of art. So it's almost like I kind of like the direction that swatches is, and like what you're saying where people may not even know that it's interactive, but I hope that as I progress in my artistic career, one of the things that I'm trying to really like make as part of what the brand that I'm trying to build as an artist right now is that my work is interactive. So hopefully as I build my portfolio out more, people will know that the art is interactive. And then if not, when somebody does like just stumble upon it like a random person and they click into it and they're surprised, I feel like that's almost like what I'm going for in a weird way now. So
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. Like when people, if you can get people, if you can create something that people like without having to understand fully what it is, and then give them sort of the opportunity to discover more if they happen to, or like if they dig deep, or at least,
yeah,
like digging deep, it's so funny, like with things on the internet, digging deep is like pressing one extra button. And like
yeah,
you you see like the art and like do you click it? And it's like even,
yeah.
you can mint it like for swatches, for example, like you can mint it without knowing that it's interactive. And then like do you click it? Like literally like one extra click. But like one extra click is there's such a fall off on that. There's like an 80% fall off or like a
Hmm.
90% fall off. So it's it's just kind of interesting, but I definitely resonate with like that surprise element that yeah, if you made it more obvious, like you might get more like sort of people interested at like top of funnel, so to speak. But by having it not be as obvious, you're giving the opportunity for people to get that pleasant surprise where they already liked it in the simple version, and that's really cool, I think. And that's how that's how swatches came to me. It was like, okay, I like that art, and then whoa, like there's something else here that is like the main thing that I wasn't even aware of, and that's just like a super
Hmm.
cool feeling. So I'm curious to talk about like some of the sort of design decisions that you made around swatches. So like obviously you were looking to, post Motorheads, you were looking to do something that leveraged your skills, like combining code and art more so than you did with Motorheads.
Hmm.
And but Motorheads I think was great, like for getting you on base. I mean, not literally, like, but figuratively. I think, Motorheads was on Optimism, like you mentioned. Swatches was on base. But Swatches was, I believe, 7,777 pieces. And you have like certain parameters like palette, style, colors, shapes, hash. I'm curious just like how you formulated that. I understand you were sort of working on it for, several months, and I'm just curious to hear sort of like the evolution from like the seed of the idea to actually, setting it in stone and getting it out there.
No, 100%. I can talk about that for a minute, I feel. So like so initially when I made the like first swatch, I guess you could say, it was not even interactive. So it was just like initially prior to me discovering like that dash 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 collection by Snowfro, I was already working on swatches, but I was working on just the script to generate the images. And after that, I like went down a bunch of different iterations for like how to organize the metadata and how the collection should be laid out. Because it was first just fully generative, and then I wanted to have this other element in there where I had like more like custom pieces, because I'm not like a generative artist in the same way that like Tyler Hobbs is with cadenzas, where it's like the algorithm is the art. I very much like use code, but I'm not like keen on just needing like the algorithm to spit it out. So like I like having control over certain pieces if needed, basically. And one of the first like traits that I obviously like came across with swatches was like the palette stuff. And initially there's like 40 palettes with swatches. So like I had the ones that are the most common ones here, where it's like the chromatic, the pastel, and the grayscale. But I started making like some palettes out of the one of ones, if that makes sense. So like for example, there's like a SpongeBob one, because I watched like a bunch of SpongeBob as a kid. So I had like a SpongeBob palette, but then I didn't really like how a lot of the generations were looking, because with a more uh like a less broad palette where the colors are more specific, the like random generation of those pieces, I think like didn't look good usually, because what the palette was like something that I wanted to have the proper visual for. So that's where I started making one of ones. And then I decided to like constrain the palettes, like the main palettes, to just be like three colors, where then the ones that generate from those three colors, for example, when there's like if there's like a swatch that just has like red, orange, and yellow, that comes from that palette, that makes that one cool too, because that is like how that happened, versus me having a palette that just is red, yellow, and orange, if that makes sense.
Do you
So
wanna do, I don't think I've ever done this on the podcast, but I was just thinking about it earlier today and tested it, and I think it works fine, is we could just like pull it up on a screen share, and for people,
oh yeah, yeah,
not everyone will watch it on video, obviously, but for people who want to, it'll be additive, I think, to the description. I can pull a screen up on my side, or you can if you want, whatever you prefer.
sure, here I can pull one up, or I don't know if my computer has permissions. If you just
Hmm.
go, if you're able to screen share it on OpenSea, just pull up the collection.
1 second. You should be able to do it now, but I can also do it if you want.
All
And I'll
right,
just
let
cut this.
me.
I can cut this part of the audio too.
Cool, no worries. Let me pull it up.
I just think you probably can drive to what you're saying better
For
than I
sure.
would.
Yeah,
So
yeah. All right, I gotta adjust the settings here 1 second.
hmm.
Oh, I gotta quit and reopen, so I'll be right back.
uh, quit this the Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, is that cool? Will that mess up the recording?
Um, I was thinking about it, but no, it should be fine. Go for it. As long as I stand, it should be fine.
Okay, cool. Be right back.
Hey,
Yep. All right, cool. I think I can share now.
it doesn't have your avatar or your icon for whatever reason anymore, but I mean, it doesn't matter. It just says
Oh, that's
JVMI
weird.
on my side, but it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I'll share my screen, so it'll probably disappear anyways.
Yeah.
Let's see. Can you see it?
Yeah. I love how the cover image and the and the profile picture itself are both like dynamic, super cool.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, well, I was talking about the palettes, I think, right? So if
Yeah,
we go in
basically like
here,
going how you sort of ended up doing some of them one on one of one.
yeah. So yeah, so basically if we look at these, so there's the main distinction is like the style between the swatches. So classic means that it's basically generative, and custom are all of the ones that I like made by hand, I guess you would say. And
So 100 is like a non-arbitrary number, obviously, that you chose, and then
yeah,
7777 came from maybe that's somewhat arbitrary. I don't know, but it's
it's
cool. I don't know
it's
if you ever
semi-arbitrary.
I don't know if you
Um,
ever thought of it, but the 100 obviously it's a flat number, a good number anyway, but it's kind of like a nod to Bobby hundreds, I feel like.
oh shit, I didn't think about that, but that's interesting. Maybe that's like a subconscious thing that I did.
There's always these
Um,
things that people do, like at least in my experience, like there's these things that I've done that I after the fact can like attribute extra meaning to them that I didn't think of when I did
yeah,
it in the first place. So that's a cool one, I think, for the 100.
100%, bro. Like so much of the like I outside of the swatches and just like creating art in general, I feel like that's a lot of what my process is that it's almost like going back and forth between visual aesthetic and then ascribing meaning to something and then
Mm.
like kind of doing that back and forth until you're happy with what the end result is.
Hmm.
Um, but but yeah, so like a lot of these like one of ones that were created initially were supposed to be palettes, but I just didn't like how it looked, and then I definitely wanted
So
to like,
sorry to interrupt, but like
oh
palettes
no, no
as in
worries.
like you were gonna make these designs sort of configurable as to what colors they'd be comprised of and generative sort of as a result. Like basically they could be custom
Pretty
filled
much.
with whatever, colors.
Yeah, exactly. So like this palette right here, um, I had previous to this, you can see that this one has like these colors and the palette is chromatic, which
Mm.
just means that it can pull colors from like a normal rainbow. So similarly, I created other palettes where like it could pull colors from what colors I would associate with something like SpongeBob. But
Mm.
then the end results of that, like I wanted to make sure that every single NFT that was created, I thought like hit hard and like looked good. So throughout the process of me doing that, I didn't find that the ones that came from custom palettes looked good. And I really liked how the custom ones started like ending up, especially when someone has like the context of the like generative collection. This was like the most fun I had in like the entire process of making swatches was like creating these one of one swatches, which are more like images that use the style aesthetic that was kind of created through with swatches. But then like I'm starting to like kind of create abstract art out of that that like is associated with different things. So yeah,
How did
that
those
was
100 come about? Was it like all at once, like you made like 30 in a night because you just like sort of went on a roll, or was it like trickled over time, or was there like a first batch and then like a waiting period and then like another batch?
it was like I had like a fat list of just like throughout the process of me making swatches, maybe like in the last month, I had like this running list of just ideas that would come to me at random times that I would like write down in this list. And I would then sit down and try to like grind out as many as I can in a session. So the like concepts that come about here were not in a single session, but I probably like made all of these in like 5 different sessions.
Mm.
But most of the time that I had to like dedicate to doing this was getting like the like swatches interface that renders all of these images to be able to handle like a custom input because like for example the way that this is implemented is like it's the same code that's like rendering this shape and everything, but what I had was like I had all of this in like Adobe Illustrator, and then I wrote like a script to like take that SVG that I generated from Adobe Illustrator and to generate like the metadata so that it would render like this, if that makes sense. That might be like too technical for someone that hasn't like seen the code for swatches, but that process was like the like a difficult process for me. And then
And
like
then,
creating the images were was like more fun.
so looking at beach, which is like one of my favorites, I think some, some of these 100s are like, the customs are like, you look at it and someone could actually guess.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
someone might not guess. Well, I don't know. Like it's hard to look at this and guess something that's not beach. I feel like, maybe like,
It's like once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. But then I feel
yeah.
like if you see it randomly, I would be curious like what people would think this is.
Well, I think there's like sort of there's like a few maybe like tiers. One is like where you see it and you can't unsee it, like Bowser was like on the previous page. That's like a really nice one.
Uh-huh.
But and that's like I don't think I could have maybe guessed that. So like there's sort of one category like you see it and you can actually guess it without knowing. So like I think beach could be in that category. Like what's the one word you would use to describe this? I think you would get the
Yeah.
answer beach a fair amount of the
Uh-huh.
time. Um, Bowser, like I'm not so sure. Or like Bitcoin was sort of nearby it. Not so sure.
Hmm.
But once you see it, you can, you're not gonna be able to
You
unsee that. You're gonna
associate,
you're gonna
I feel like,
know,
yeah.
yeah, you're gonna know what it is. And then there's ones that, people might not, sort of forget, like caution
Hmm.
maybe down there is like so the
Yeah.
more abstract it is, basically, like maybe the less inclined someone would be to be able to like reverse name it. But so if you go to like, pick whichever one you want, what how does the interactivity come into play? Because like that changes the colors. It no longer reflects the title beyond like the shapes are the same as the initial, but like the colors change and stuff.
Hmm.
How did you like determine the interactive element for these custom 100 and then more broadly for the rest of the collection?
So the interactive element is the same for every swatch. So that was actually another design decision that I made because I was thinking about traits and how like the interactive portion of swatches could you could like delineate that with traits too. Like for example, there's like different modes and sizes that you can do. So one thing that I was playing with is like maybe some swatches can have like the ability to turn it into squares, or like the like hypnotic mode was something that people like, so like maybe only special swatches can be able to even do this. But the reason why I went against that and made every swatch be able to do like the full functionality was because I wanted the functionality of the interaction to like be distributed widely,
Hmm.
and for that concept to be recognized like more often, and so that every like a lot of the appeal for me when with making swatches is that even if you get like a floor one, it should still be able to give you that same amount of joy that you would get with like one of the more special ones.
Right.
So that was like a distinct design decision that I made because there was an iteration of swatches that I was working on where that wasn't the case. But I'm pretty happy with like how it is right now, in that there is like a single interface that every swatch goes through, and that the real difference between all of them is just like the color and configuration of what they are.
Yeah, it's interesting that you gave it this like basically that's a pretty important decision. You could have made like these various interactive elements extremely rare.
Yeah,
But I feel like because the interactive piece is so core to not only swatches, but what you expect to do in the future as an artist, to be able to allow everyone to experience that. And again, it's already going to be limited by people who even like sort of discover that that's possible, like beyond like sort of surface level collectors or people who
right,
are
right,
aware who might not even have collected. And so giving at least the maximum opportunity for people to experience interactivity in all of the various ways that you've sort of devised to make it interactive, I think is it's an interesting decision that I think like is going to set a precedent for like the way that you go about your work. So that's cool. I like that.
right, right. Yeah, no, that's exactly how I would put it.
Yeah. So what else are we is there anything else that comes to mind to jump to on the swatches collection, or we can sort of like zoom out and talk more broadly about some things?
Um, I think the last thing to touch about with swatches is like I really feel that because this collection took me like I think like 8 months to make or something. And I wasn't working on it like every single day for 8 months or anything. It was more like in streaks where
Yeah.
like I would get super into it and like kind of like flesh out an idea and then like take a pause for a minute and go back to it. Um and I think like swatches it marks like the beginning of my like interactive art like phase or like the like theme of that really engulfing a lot of what I'm creating at least now and what I plan to for the future. So I feel like that when I look at swatches, I look at it as like the beginning of a larger journey for me, and it really like I feel hits on all the points that we talked about before with like the interactive art and everything. And the one of the main things that I was like trying to do with swatches, like if you think about like what does the name swatches mean? It it means like this is like the most simple form of this medium almost because it's like it's super like minimalistic and everything, but I hope to like build on this in future projects and future pieces that I make in the future. Um, so yeah, that's like kind of what I like associate with swatches when I look at it now like months later.
Yeah, that's sort of like the foundation basically for your continued work.
Exactly. Yep.
So a couple of sort of like one-off questions, and then I actually want to look at your website as well because I think it's really cool and we've already got the screen share up. Um,
Cool.
but two questions or maybe three. I won't lay them all on you at once, but curious how you came up with the or like the origin story for your signature, which you use as like your profile picture and everything.
Uh-huh.
The JVMI, and then separately if there's anything to, and maybe like these aren't compelling stories, but I'm just sort of curious how they came about. And then the other one would be you have like this race car with like the smoke coming out the back or whatever. And I'm also curious in like sort of your social media handles. I'm curious how that where that came from as well.
Sure, yeah. So the JVMI signature that I'm like rocking right now, I made that in between motorheads and swatches. And the main reason that or like I guess the inspiration for it initially was like I'm like super into like graffiti art as well. So I'm not like a graffiti artist in like I like outside spray painting stuff, but that aesthetic since I was a kid has always like really spoken to me. So I wanted to make my signature like rooted in that aesthetic in a way because I feel like when I see graffiti art, it reminds me of crypto sometimes because the like handles of graffiti artists are also pseudonyms that they like tag everywhere. So like JVMI is like my pseudonym, and then I wanted to have that like fundamental aesthetic be there as well. And then the way that I like came up with it in Druid is like there's just like this like a few files on my iPad that it's just like a million different iterations of this logo. So yeah, this was just the one that I liked.
Did you like sign that with your finger, or were you like, drawing it
With
out
like a
more
pencil,
intentionally?
like an Apple Pencil.
Oh, okay. Apple Pencil on an iPad, and you just drew a bunch until you got one you liked, basically.
Yes.
Nice.
I don't know if maybe you can see the like similarities between the signature and this, but
Mm.
uh this brand is a brand that I really like.
Hmm.
And the initial signature that I started making, I was like, this was like the mood board for it. It's
Mm.
like this logo. And then I just like kept exploring different options from there.
Yeah, I used to have a shirt that I really liked from there with the big big 8 ball on it. I like that. But the signature that you ended up going with, it's so tight. Like there's like, very little room between like the V and like the surrounding characters, and the X is like perfectly in the,
Hmm.
loop of the J. I feel like there must have been so many iterations where that was overlapping.
Oh yeah, a bunch. And like a lot of the design decisions, like if we really want to get into it, is like the spacing is exactly what you're saying, and that's why like this line is here because I had a bunch that I didn't have the line underneath, and for some reason, since this is so detached from this section, uh I didn't like stretching the M's like so high between the J, so then I had to add this to like let these characters be more like normal sized in my handwriting.
Hmm. Interesting. Um, so really you weren't just doing like the same thing over and over again until you got it right. You were actually iterating and like adding lines and like changing the placement of things and stuff like that.
No, I definitely drew this exact one like over 100 times, but there was like a different explorations like
Right.
more broadly outside of this.
And so how about the race car in your like Twitter name and stuff?
So that came from around the time that I was building Motorheads. So the race car is like a direct nod to Motorheads, and during the time of like me releasing Motorheads and like posting a bunch of that art, every like or not every single one, but like most posts that I had were kind of like signed with that like race car and smoke. So before I had like a signature that I started posting more and more like which was this one. I feel like the race car and the smoke thing was almost my signature in a way.
Mm.
So I've kind of just like kept that.
Yeah, it's cool to have an emoji signature and also like this custom signature. I think you can use both in various places, like depending, and obviously you're using both now. Um, so one more question before we get to your website. You mentioned sort of like having drawn not only sort of created your first swatch or swatch-like art before discovering Snowfroze dash 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 and deciding you wanted to make the interactive element a core piece of it, but um, I'm curious, like the very earliest start of swatches,
Hmm.
like what was that? Was that like a
What was the
Figma
first
file
one?
that you just like popped open and like we're gonna launch one piece of art on like Zora or something, or like was it not even NFT related at that point? Yeah, like what was the first one, or something from like the very earliest days?
Let me try to pull up a picture of what the first one looked like. But while I'm looking for it, it was so I like made the first one on Adobe Illustrator. I actually only learned Figma like a couple months ago. But like a bunch of the art that I like basically everything that I've posted that I have made has come from Illustrator. And maybe I can pull it up and send it to you later. But yeah, it was just like it looked pretty similar to like one of these, but it was less minimal in its aesthetic. It looked more like a swatch that was like graffiti. And the reason why I drew that was I just like either I saw this term somewhere or like it like the term came to me, but it was like digital graffiti. I just liked the way that those two words like fit together. So I made an art piece that visualized what digital graffiti like means to me. And that was like the first swatch. And then I like deconstructed that art piece and was like, how would I make how to like I write a script that can generate like an infinite amount of these, and then that's what made like the swatches script.
And at some point you like sort of cleaned it up, so to speak, where it was like less graffiti and more,
It's just like straight
circles.
up, yeah, like this because I also had like that digital graffiti one. Around each shape there was like a 5 pixel stroke, and when you hovered over it, it did like a 45-degree like pop out effect. So it looked more like retro, I guess, almost in a way. And after I had made that, I thought it was cool, but then I like I don't know, there was something about just like the like simplicity of just like these shapes and color and like no border or anything that after looking at like a bunch of different iterations of what I was doing, I felt like this was the cleanest
The
in the one that I like went back to.
the stroke on the shapes, was that like predated the Snowfro discovery and like wanting to go interactive in a more significant way, but that's kind of like a seed of interactivity, no?
That was after. Yeah. Yeah. So that
Oh,
was like
okay, that was
after I
after. Okay,
yeah.
got it. Cool. Well, if you don't mind, let's go to your website. I can also pull it up if you prefer. But this is super cool. I
That's all
feel
good.
like you just sort of publicly announced this. I guess JVMI Art was your previous site as well, so people could have found it, but you just
Yeah.
updated this, right?
I just updated this like a few days ago. It's not I haven't like fully like posted about it on Twitter and stuff, but I've been posting about it on like Farcaster, trying to get feedback mainly. Because there's like one last piece that I want to add to here that we can talk about. But yeah, so like this website, the intention behind it was to basically I guess like going back a little bit, after swatches, after I released swatches, a lot of my work looked really, really different. Like there was Motorheads, there was swatches, there was like all the streetwear stuff I did. There was like a bunch of different graffiti drawings that I had worked on, and like all of that stuff. Um, I like all of that stuff, and that's very much like part of my identity as a person, I guess you could say. But in terms of like trying to proliferate my presence online more, I've all like the past like 2 years, I've really been like struggling with and like trying to grapple with um making a through line with all of my work, and that's always been something that has like really bothered me about when I look at the things that I've created is that there isn't like a through line for what I'm making, and that would like kind of get me down because it would make me feel like what am I really like building towards? Like it feels like a lot of the stuff that I'm making is kind of like one-offs, and though like and if something that I'm making like has success with it, I like had trouble with like doubling down on something, if that makes sense. So the first step in me trying to do that in like this new like phase of my artistic career was to challenge myself to make like a portfolio website that I could like basically show someone and hope that they would be able to like understand what like my artistic brand is. So that's basically what I hope to achieve with this website that I've made. And that's like kind of what I'm looking for feedback on right now too as I show it to people is like if this website drives that concept home. Because obviously like not everyone that like looks at my art is gonna like go on this website and see it, but if I'm not even able to like create a single page like website that conveys that, then I'm like confused in my head about it in the first place, if you feel me.
Yeah, no, I get you. And it's I wonder, I want to look at the website, and I think the answer to your question for me at least is yes, like it does convey that consistent brand, but I wonder where this like pressure or like, thing that leads to this negative feeling of not like being able to find that through line. Like I wonder if that is from yourself or
Mm-hmm.
from external. And if it's from yourself, then fine. Like obviously, people feel free to put as much pressure on yourself for a certain thing that you want, like as you want. Like that's fine. That's totally your thing to do. But it would be kind of a shame if it was externally driven. And the reason I sort of bring that up is because, something I've been sort of like doing stuff on the internet for like 4 years roughly. Like I started with a blog and then quickly made a Twitter, and then like 6 or 7 months later started this podcast.
Hmm.
And I've always just kind of like tweeted whatever I want. And on the blog, I write about whatever I want. On the podcast, I talk to whoever I want. I've had, crypto founders and longevity scientists and basketball coaches. Like, couldn't be more different, basically. And like, yeah, there's certain themes because I have certain like themes in my interests. Like, probably half the guests have been sort of crypto related or something. But,
Hmm.
it's pretty, wide sort of ranging. And so to some extent, like there is no through line, but also like I am the through line, and
Yeah.
so like I feel like in your case, like you are the through line. Like you don't need to have a through line necessarily that is explainable beyond that. But the reason I sort of allude to this like external pressure is because like it seems very clear that there are, like benefits to growing an online following, to sort of niching yourself, and
Hmm.
like, you know, having that very public and understandable through line. Like you see these people with these profiles that's like, I'm like the books guy or like the writing guy or like
Yeah, it's like you can say it in a few words and you like get it or something.
exactly. And like these people seem to do well, building followings. Like you look at I don't know, with like on the design side, if you know like Soren Iverson, I had him on had him on the podcast, and then like OX designer as well. Like these guys are
Hmm.
posting like a similar sort of template of design every day. And it's super creative within that constraint, but it's a constraint that they're sort of self-imposing. And like Soren's not just tweeting about whatever the heck he's thinking that day. Like he's sticking to the framework, and it's serving him really well in terms of like building this following because people know what they're going to get when they follow that profile. And similarly
Yeah.
for me, like
Yep.
recently I started just basically only posting about base colors, like not totally completely, but like 80-90%. And like I sort of miss tweeting about other stuff, but it seems to be doing pretty well. And also like it's what I'm thinking about most of the time. So it kind of comes naturally right now.
Hmm.
But I feel like you don't need to force it. With that said, though, I know that you worked really hard on this website and wanted to establish that through line. So um, unless you have any comments on there, like why don't we scroll through it a little bit and like sort of talk it through if that makes sense.
No, I 100% like resonate with what you're saying. I think like that exact mentality is the mentality that I share because you don't want to you don't want to like artificially limit yourself because had I done that at any phase prior to this, like
Right.
if
It
I
feels like the right
uh,
time to do it.
yeah, it's almost like this is like the first thing that I feel like I'm kind of committing to that I'm not like that I'm able to establish like creative guardrails around that still is fulfilling to me. But getting to this point was a real like it's been a real journey, I think, my entire life because like I had the same type of feeling after I did Motorheads because I was like, okay, Motorheads is like the most successful thing that I've done in like in the NFT space so far. So I should make all of my artwork revolve around the Motorheads aesthetic because that is what has been successful. But had I like done that, I would have never made swatches. So that like reminder that I have for myself is definitely something I think that is what you're also saying,
Yeah.
where like you don't want to like nerf yourself and then not make something that could be pretty cool. So I completely agree with that. And I think like for any like artists that are listening to this or like people that discover this that have any type of creative endeavors, like I think limiting yourself artificially is like the worst thing you can do as an artist.
Yeah, I think basically what we're both agreeing on is like you don't want to force as much as you might appreciate that like the niching down or like the forcing a through line sort of thing, committing to like some sort of thread is as much as one can appreciate objectively that that's like beneficial for gaining a following on the internet. um Forcing that is not the move. However, when you come across something that pulls you to do that, you can recognize that it's a good thing and allow it to happen with sort of the
Like organically almost.
Yeah, and with the sort of mental note or whatever, like sort of the um, caution like in the back of your head that like if something comes up that doesn't fit the mold, don't just auto reject it and like
Exactly. Yeah.
sort of be open to other things as well. So I think we're it's a very nuanced thing, but like we're
Yeah.
I think on the exact same page.
Yeah.
So let's do one thing. Let's pull the dark mode on
Oh
the
yeah.
website. So I casted this like just before we jumped on, but this is the single coolest dark mode toggle I've ever seen. I just like, everyone has, the standard sort of dark mode toggle, and it's like a fairly boring button or toggle. And the fact that this is like a lamp, I don't even know what you call it, like a lamp string, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's just so cool. And it's like at the top, it almost makes like the browser like head like the top bar into like a really wide lamp, like it kind of works. So I really like that. And then when you navigate through the colors, it also sort of like orients around your cursor there, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this is like the interactive piece basically. So the intention behind this portion of the website was actually motivated by this. Maybe you can see like a through line here or not, but the Yuga Labs website is really dope because it's just got this like I view this as like an art piece in itself where uh it's like an ever changing like logo, I guess, that they have. But when I went on this website, like obviously I'd already known what Yuga was, but I remember somebody showed me this and was how would you make this? And this was like 3 years ago or something. But they've actually had this for as their website for a while. But this idea of just like conveying whatever this conveys here was like kind of what I was going for with this.
Hmm.
But and to like make it into like an art piece in itself basically is what my intention was. So yeah, you can like click on the thing and it'll like follow your cursor and stuff, and it's just like I'm trying to like lay out what the aesthetic that I'm trying to like explore more deeply into like throughout the future projects that I work on and stuff with this, and then that's basically what this was supposed to be. And the reason why the website I'm not like blasting that I've like updated my website is because I'm working right now on like basically like people being able to mint this as like an art piece. So when you hover over this in like the final website, what I think I'm gonna do is like as you hover over it, there'll be like a mint button that pops up, and then you'll be able to like mint this uh like interactive piece
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah, that's very cool. And that'll be fungible basically. It'll be interactive, but it'll be the same for everyone, right?
It'll be like a one of one open edition, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And then I'm just looking at the time, and I know we've got like 10 minutes left here if that's good with you. And there's a bunch of other sections on the website here. We can
Yeah,
scroll
let's
quickly.
move.
I
We can
love
move quicker, yeah.
yeah, I love the text box here on like sort of the about. If you go down a bit, um, this is really nice. Like
Oh, this.
I haven't seen that. Is that inspired by something specific, or did you come up with that?
I came up with this. This was actually like a version of this was on my previous website too. So I kind of just like modified the aesthetic to fit with this.
Got it. And the let's get in touch is like actually functional, which is super cool.
Yeah, and
And
then just
then
points to Twitter.
you've got swatches below that. We went pretty deep there, so we can, fly
Hmm.
by that for now. And then I think a great place to end is on charts. So is
Yeah.
this a next collection that's coming for you?
This is a future collection, yeah. So I've been working on this basically like a couple weeks after Swatches came out. Um and this is different and like pretty different from Swatches in terms of like what I'm going for. Obviously the through line is the aesthetic. You can see like the similarities there. But I basically wanted to make like a dark mode of Swatches, even though you can like do dark mode here. The like base images and like pretty much what everything is made for is to be viewed with like a white background.
Hmm.
So one of the first things that I wanted to like explore was this idea of like doing a similar aesthetic to swatches, but making it like primarily be for like dark mode,
Hmm.
because everything that I use is dark mode, and I like this is very much more reflective of my like traditional aesthetic than swatches is actually.
Mm.
So I like wanted to do that, and then I won't get too deep into like what this project is because I'm still working on like how to communicate that, but it'll be another interactive NFT project, similar to swatches in a way, but very different in terms of like what it's trying to do and like what the experience of collecting it and everything will be. The through line is that you can also like put this into different modes and stuff. So I've made a lot of like the interactions and like the visual artistic stuff with this project, which is being teased here, but I have not fully explored um how it will work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think maybe my last question, and this is sort of I have to ask given what I'm doing with base colors, but I'm curious how how you determine sort of like the possible colors to use. So like on this, for charts, like I'm looking at the orange chart and there's,
Hmm.
several different sort of shades of orange there. Looks
Yep.
like all of them are unique. Maybe the end ones are the same or something, or maybe three of them are the same. I can't quite tell. Um, but for both this and for swatches, I'm curious how you sort of like defined the color verse, so to speak, like what you would choose from.
That is mainly just like uh aesthetically finding colors that fit well together on like Figma or Illustrator. The way that the colors are currently working for this is that there's like value ranges. So the colors for the bars are correlated with what value this bar is. So I have a palette for this similar to like swatches kind of where there's like a value range, so like 0 to like 100,000 or something here will be this color, but
Mm,
then like 100,000 to like whatever other number would be this color, and that's
right.
kind of how this is built.
Got it. That makes sense. Cool. Well, so anything else? I'm trying to think. I guess we go back. We went through the site. We went through swatches. Talked about a bunch of other stuff. I'm trying to think what else. Um, I don't know. I feel pretty good about this. This was a really interesting conversation, and it's great. Like I love going deep on sort of the creative process. Do you think charts is going to be the next the next big drop for you, or is there something not being teased that could sort of
Their
front run it?
charts will probably be like the next like big drop, which I'm not even sure when I'll do this, but it'll be sometime in the next like probably 4 months. But there's another like avenue to my work that I'm exploring concurrently right now, which is like this is just like a gallery section that shows different like they're not one of ones, they're just like open edition, like future open edition pieces that I'll like release.
Mm,
But I'm trying to also do something here where it's like a collection that I'm like building forever. And like making like new abstractions out of like different things in real life out of this style. Um, so yeah, I'm like working on both of these, and I'm more heavily working on this right now than charts.
on gallery. Have you considered like committing to some kind of release cadence with it where it's like I'm going to put out one of these a week or something like that as like a sort of a forcing function, or mostly just
Yeah,
creating
that's
now and mint
exactly
later?
that's exactly what I'm doing. Is like I'm trying to build and design because I want all of these to be interactive also. So right now, what I'm literally working on today is designing what repeatable type of interface that can hold one of these types of things, and then I need to like do a bunch of coding to basically like create a streamlined process for when I have an idea like this. How can I go from an idea to a full interactive NFT and like building out the infrastructure for that basically.
Hmm. So none of these are interactive just yet, not on the website at least.
No, no, no. These are just like pictures that I've made as like concepts.
Got it. Cool. Well, yeah, I really like those too. And I'll be whatever's next, I'll be minting. So looking
Appreciate
forward
it.
to it. But thank you again, JVMI, for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and admired the work from afar, but great to get the stories behind everything and learn about some of these decisions that you made. So appreciate the time, and
100%.
look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate how like nuanced the conversation was. It was really fun.
Awesome. Oh, and just before we wrap, where can people go? You know, obviously jvmi.art. I guess we've got all, I don't usually do the screen share, so we don't have the links up, but basically if you want to look more into it, just go to the site that
Yeah,
you're
I
looking
would.
at,
Yeah,
jvmi.art.
exactly. Yeah, just go to this website. All the socials and everything are at the bottom for wherever you want to find me.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks again, man. Have a good rest of the night.
Appreciate it. Yeah, you too.